So this is kind of a longer video where I wanted to talk about getting different roast profiles in the Popper coffee roaster. You may have gotten the roaster and were told in the instructions to start just with the heat setting at 4, the fan on high. You roasted. It was perhaps a medium roast. It could have gone a little dark. You started changing that and putting the roast dial at 3. You put it at 2. You wanted to see what happened. But what are you doing? What do those settings mean? And how do you use that? Perhaps making some adjustments during the roast to get some better roast results. And especially maybe you want to do some espresso with a popper, which air roasts and espresso don't normally match up really well, but I think you can get great roast for espresso from the popper. So I'm going to go in some basics about profiling your roast. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a unit that I put thermocouples in. I'm checking the watts that's being consumed, and I'm correlating that to the adjustments on the dial, and then cupping those roasts to see what the result was. And I had some really interesting settings, and I can show you the Artisan roast profile graphs that I get from them. But I think the main point is to try to share this information so you don't actually have to do all that. You don't have to modify your popper, put Artisan probes in and do the data logging with Artisan so that you can kind of see the results of what I got and maybe try those out with your popper. So I'm going to taste some of the roast profiles in the popper, but the first thing I'm going to do is talk about basically not changing anything, just selecting one heat number and going for it. So I have 3 roasts here I'd like to talk about. On this one, it was 7 minutes, the full normal unedited roast cycle with the heat dial set to 2. The fan is on high fan speed, as it is with all of these. So high fan, heat on 2. High fan, heat on 3 for 7 minutes. And the high fan speed, heat on level 4 for 7 minutes. 7 minutes, actually I didn't get to 7 minutes. It was 6 minutes because it was getting so dark. And this was what we recommended in the original popper instructions. And for a lot of people, that's going to be quite a dark roast. It was getting into second crack. And if that's what you like, you're all set. These profiles work really well for pour over drip coffee. And what I got here was a City to City Plus roast, something City Plus to Full City roast, and definitely Full City Plus roast. So if, the thing with settings on roasters and getting fancy about changing profiles and stuff is if you don't have to, don't. The only reason to start making changes is if you don't like what you're getting or you're curious what those changes will do. But I'm always for the simplest path to the happiest conclusion. So let's taste these. So focusing on this one. That's a very bright, lively, I chose a Kenya as my sample coffee here, so it already has a lot of acidity. This really highlights that. It's extremely sweet. Just roast heat level 2, 7 minutes. So easy. And I think this would be definitely very nice in pour over. Probably not for espresso. Let's try this one, heat level 3, 7 minutes. It's quite a bit darker. Definitely a lot of roast bittering tones are coming out in this. Still a lot of acidity. Can still definitely taste it's a Kenya coffee. This is sort of, I think either of these two are going to be in like the Pete's coffee range for people who like a little more roast taste in their coffee. And let's try this one. Now it's not appreciably darker. It is certainly darker, certainly more acidic, but because I had to stop this because it was going so dark on heat level 4 for 7 minutes, and this ended up only being a 6-minute roast, it's probably a little bit closer than these two are, so all of these, I think, what I'm tasting is good coffee for pour over, faster roasting, a little more aggressive, tends to produce a wider range in the cup between the sort of low tone notes and high tone notes, which really works well. for pour over, making a more dynamic cup, I think. So I'm going to talk about these next three. Now these are where I start to use heat profiles. In other words, during the 7-minute roast process, I'm starting to make changes to the heat dial. So why do we have roast profiles at all? What's their use? Are they just complicating the roast process? So here's an interesting case in point. These are two roasts. On this one, I had the popper at higher heat, number 3, for a full 7 minutes. On this one, I started out on a very low heat setting that I'm recommending. It's heat level 1 for 3 minutes, heat level 3 for 2 minutes, heat level 2 for 3 minutes. 7-minute roast, 7-minute roast. Here's the resulting coffee, and I think you can see it's easier to see in real life, but this is darker. And yet both of these roasts, same roast time with different heat settings, resulted in 80.8 grams out from 95 grams in, which is about 15% weight loss. It's a little bit of a dark roast. Exact same weight loss, which is an indicator pretty accurate for degree of roast. And so yet they have a different darkness appearance and a different flavor. Since I've already cupped these, I can tell you that. So that is a reason, is that you can get the same degree of roast, approach that degree of roast, attain it differently, and have a different flavor profile. So let's look at what those different roast profiles are. So I'm going to talk about these 3 different roasts, and these are 3 different profiles, meaning that I've changed the heat setting during the roast process, during the 7-minute roast process. On all of these, I've used the high fan speed, but I've done some different things. And the one thing that's the same on all of these that I found was coming out with a very nice result was to start with the lowest heat setting on the popper. So I'm at heat level 1 on the heat dial for the first 3 minutes on all 3 of these. Then I'm making different adjustments that are resulting in here progressively darker roasts. So let's talk about these. You can see that the ground coffee, that they are appreciably different. These two are a little closer together again. For the first one, I've had heat level 1 for the first 3 minutes and heat level 2 for the rest. Let's taste this one. I'm gonna go back and taste our heat level 2 for 3 minutes. Sorry, for 7 minutes. It's an interesting difference there. What I'm getting is a lot of sweetness, a lot of acidity, like just keeping it at 2 for the entire roast, but perhaps more body, a little more balance on this one. So this is a really nice, it highlights the Kenya aspects. I can really taste the origin here. I can really taste the acidity. It's very citric. I think this is great for pour over type coffee. This is probably one of my favorite approaches if you want to do like roasts that are good for cupping or good for pour over, to get a very light roast taste, very dynamic, sweet, a lot of acidity, and you can really taste the origin through the roast on this. So that's heat level 1, 3 minutes, heat level 2 for 4 minutes. Now here I'm making a couple changes. I'm using heat level 1 for 3 minutes. I'm going up to heat level 3 for 2 minutes. And then I'm bringing it down, heat level 2 for the finish of the roast for 3 minutes. Here at the 5-minute mark, I'm starting to get signs of first crack. Reaching on my thermometer 415 degrees or so. So that's after I've gone up for heat level 1 for 3 minutes, heat level 3 for 2 minutes. I'm starting to hear some first crack. I'm bringing it down to heat level 2 to finish out the roast. And it gives it a very nice, slow, controlled finish to the roast. It's an appreciably darker roast. I can just see it in the color in the cup. So there's certainly a more aggressive roast taste, a more bittersweet, which you don't have much bittersweet here. It's just kind of sweet, sweet like kind of caramel honey. And this is a lot more aggressive, maybe a dark malt type sweetness. I'm starting to think like this could be an espresso type approach right here. It's a little, what I've done with my espresso ones is extend the roast even longer and been more gentle, but this is, has a lot of balance and definitely more roast taste. So this is a great roast again for pour over. And I would say, comparing that to what I'm getting with the ones where I just let it run through without any adjustment, I think there's a more complex sweetness happening here. While I still have the acidity, I would call it a more balanced cup. In pour over, this may actually be more dynamic in terms of the bright notes, sort of the depth, bass and treble, but this has more mid-tone to it by doing this adjustment where you're starting off slow for the first 3 minutes at heat level 1. This is a little bit simpler. This one I took heat level 1 for the first 3 minutes, then went to heat level 3 for the remainder of the roast, with the option to back it down like I did here, but kind of going a little bit more aggressive, a little darker. Oh, this one's very nice. I'm a little surprised it's actually tastes a little bit lighter than this one, and it has a little more nuance. You know, what we're finding here sometimes is that the voltage level that you're at, the voltage drop, results in these settings on the popper using different watt levels. The popper's consuming a higher or lower level of watts. And certain times in the day, we'll get a lighter roast doing the exact same thing we did, you know, let's say in the morning. In the afternoon, we'll get a slightly lighter roast because our voltage drops a little bit. That might have happened here, so it's a bit of an anomaly, but I really like what I'm getting, and it's certainly a simpler process. So let's talk about these next two. Now, these are ones I specifically did for espresso, which is a challenge in an air roaster. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to draw out and extend the roast longer, but be very gentle on watching the rate of rise in the popper. And so what I've done is I've done my typical high heat, high fan setting, the first 3 minutes at heat level 1, the lowest setting. Then I've increased it on both of these to heat level 2 and slowly let it ramp up. This one is a 9-minute roast, so I've added 2 additional minutes to the default popper roast time. And this one is 8 minutes and 30. I'm also using a different coffee, not Kenya. I'm using a Brazil and Ethiopia blend here. We've already pulled shots of these downstairs, and they were really good. I couldn't see a huge difference between these two, the 30-second difference, and we were almost at the same weight loss. Now I can show you these pictures of the ground coffee to judge the color of the roast, and you can see that they're very close, and the weight loss isn't incredibly different, so we're pretty near each other on both of these. Let me taste them. I know cupping espresso is a little funny. You really want to pull the shots, but I can learn a lot by tasting it. What you tend to get when you're sort of cupping a blend that's intended for espresso is a softer sort of coffee that's less dynamic. For a pour over, it would be very balanced, maybe a little boring, sensing a little more body, a little less acidity. It's kind of a more mid-range, mid-tones are what's sort of amped up. And that's definitely what I'm speaking to me right there. Very balanced, maybe too balanced for pour over. Maybe it'd be a little boring, but we already pulled shots of these and they were outstanding. These are a blend of 70 grams Brazil, 25 grams Ethiopia. Just a very simple blend for espresso, like a good basic blend without being too complicated. I wanted to focus on the roast taste. So this is what I'm recommending. 8.5 minute, 9 minute roast times in the popper with very slow low initial heat, and then not going up to level 3, level 4, unless you have the low voltage situation. But just keeping it at level 2, and I've been watching those temperatures increase very incrementally, a very slow rate of rise to a finished temperature of, I'll put the finished temperature on because I didn't write it down. Put it on the screen here. Getting towards second crack, no second crack. Very balanced, really sweet as espresso when we pulled the shots. And those are my sort of recommendations, the range of different options for both pour over and for espresso on the popper. So if you try some of these sort of heat recipes, heat profiles that I've recommended, and what you find is that you're getting lighter roast results than what I'm showing here, there might be a couple variables that are coming into play. One of them is the line voltage, what your electricity situation is feeding to the roaster, and the other could be ambient temperature. Humidity has a bit of a play. So here's some recommendations for you. So I'm going to start out this video actually focusing on a watt meter. Now this watt meter right now is set to volts, and it's showing me that we have 122.5 volts. And when I turn the popper on, that changes to 119.8 volts. So that's the voltage drop, 919 watts. Oops, sorry, 825 watts. Let's check that again. 825, 917, 919. At 3, 975, let's say. 4, 1050 watts. Okay, so this is our downstairs outlet, and it's plugged into a bench. It's further away from the main fuse box where the power comes in compared to upstairs. What we're seeing is 120.4 volts. Let's turn the roaster on. We have it set on 4. Let's find out what the voltage drop is. Voltage drop has gone to 112.4. So that's quite a difference from upstairs. Let's check out the wattage now. Here's the watt setting. So let's start again at the lowest watt setting, 718 watts. Let's go to number 2, 804 watts. 3, 851 watts. 4, 916 watts. So let's look at how those two compare. Okay, so the electrical settings are one variable that really matters. Let's check our weights. We're going to do a couple things here. I already weighed this out. So let's do 90 grams. So weighing out batches is a really important part of roasting. Your green coffee is basically part of your roast process. And if that's varying from batch to batch, then you're introducing a variable that's very unwelcome. So this is our spin test, and we're going to start with 90 grams of coffee. I'm going to put it into the cooling cycle just to see how it goes without actually roasting the coffee, and the high fan speed. What we're seeing is really good agitation. That kind of rotation initially is good, but you wouldn't want it to be much slower or less of a roiling from the bottom to the top of that. It's not just about it spinning, it's about seeing the coffee bubble up a little bit from the bottom.